The man who stopped caring. My name is John Miller. Everyone calls me Jack. Everyone except my grandmother. I am 28 years old, and I have finally learned that loving your family does not mean letting them destroy you. It took me 28 years to figure that out. 28 years of trying to be good enough. 28 years of sending money home. 28 years of watching my parents pour everything they had into my younger brother while I stood on the sidelines and wondered what was wrong with me. I am the vice president of operations for Wallace Manufacturing. I make $200,000 a year. I have a corner office on the 15th floor of a building in downtown Chicago. I have a condo in Lincoln Park with a view of the lake. I have a girlfriend named Erica Dawson who is smarter than me and patient beyond all reason. And none of that matters, because every month, like clockwork, I sent money home to my parents in Ohio. And every month, like clockwork, they asked for more. Let me start at the beginning. I grew up in a 3-bedroom house on Maple Street in a small town called Crestwood, Ohio. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone and nothing ever happened. The kind of town where the biggest excitement of the year was the 4th of July parade. It produced two kinds of people, those who left and those who stayed. I left. My father, Tom Miller, was a foreman at a small manufacturing plant. He worked 60 hours a week and came home with grease under his fingernails and a chip on his shoulder. He was 48 years old and had been unemployed for 3 years at the time of the Easter dinner that changed everything. He was fired for yelling at his boss. Not a disagreement, not a difference of opinion. He screamed at the man in front of the entire production floor because he did not like the way a new shift schedule was being implemented. He was uncompromising. That was the kindest word I could use for it. He believed that the world owed him something. He believed that his children owed him something. He believed that because he had raised me, I owed him my income. My mother, Amanda Miller, was a housewife. She had never worked a job in her life. She married my father at 19 and spent the next 28 years keeping a clean house and a quiet mouth. She did not argue with my father. She did not question his decisions. She kept the peace because keeping the peace was easier than fighting a fight she knew she would lose. And then there was Lucas. Lucas was my younger brother by 6 years. He was 22 years old. He had never held a job for more than 3 months. He lived in my parents' basement, played video games until 3 in the morning, and had been arrested twice for shoplifting. The first time, my parents paid the fine and had the charges dropped. The second time, they hired a lawyer and did the same. Lucas was the golden child. I did not understand it when I was younger. I spent years trying to figure out what Lucas had that I did not. He was not smarter than me. He was not harder working. He was not more respectful or more responsible or more anything. But he was the baby. And in my mother's eyes, the baby could do no wrong. I remember when I was 15 years old. I saved up money from mowing lawns all summer to buy a used Xbox. I worked for 3 months in the Ohio heat with sweat running down my back and grass stains on my knees. I saved every penny. I mowed lawns for Mr. Patterson, who had a half-acre lot that took 2 hours to cut. I mowed for Mrs. Delgado, who paid me $10 each time and always brought me a glass of lemonade. I mowed for Old Man Kessler, who had the biggest yard on the block and insisted I trim every edge by hand. I earned that Xbox. Lucas destroyed it 3 weeks later. He threw it down the stairs because I would not let him play it while I was doing homework. My parents made me apologize to him for making him angry. I remember standing in the living room, looking at the shattered pieces of my Xbox on the floor, and hearing my father say, "You should have just let him play." Then none of this would have happened. There were other moments too. When I was 12, I won a science fair at school. I built a working model of a hydraulic lift using syringes and plastic tubing. It was not complicated, but it worked. I brought the blue ribbon home and showed it to my parents. My father glanced at it and said, "That is nice." Then Lucas, who was 6 at the time, drew a picture of a dinosaur. My mother spent 10 minutes putting it on the refrigerator with magnets. My ribbon went into a drawer somewhere. I remember a specific Saturday when I was 14. I had spent the entire day helping my father clean out the garage. We swept the floors. We organized the tools. We hauled away bags of trash. I worked from 8 in the morning until 5 in the evening without complaining. At the end of the day, my father looked at the clean garage and said, "It is about time you started pulling your weight around here." Later that evening, Lucas asked my father for $20 to go to the movies with his friends. My father gave him the money without hesitation. I watched from the hallway. I did not say anything. I was learning that my role in the family was to work and Lucas's role was to be loved. When I was 17, I was offered a small scholarship to community college based on my grades. Not much. Enough to cover textbooks for the first year. I told my parents at dinner. My mother said, "That is wonderful, Jack." My father grunted. Then Lucas announced that he had been voted class clown in his middle school. Everyone laughed. Everyone congratulated him. No one mentioned my scholarship again. When I graduated from high school, my parents did not throw me a party. They said it was not a big deal. When Lucas graduated from middle school, they rented a hall and invited the whole extended family. I learned to stop expecting recognition. I learned to stop hoping that things would change. I stopped looking for approval and started looking for a way out. That way out came when I was 16. I got a job at Wallace Manufacturing. They had a plant just outside of Crestwood, and they were always hiring. I started in the warehouse, sweeping floors and organizing inventory. I worked after school from 4 until closing, and I worked double shifts on weekends. The work was hard. My hands blistered and calloused. I came home smelling of machine oil and sweating through my shirt. But I did not care. It was better than being at home. Around that same time, I taught myself how to code. I had a used laptop from a pawn shop, a Dell with a battery that lasted an hour and a half. I learned Python from online tutorials. I learned SQL from library books. I built small programs for fun, little automation scripts that made my life easier. I never thought it would amount to anything. I was wrong. Lucas got a car for his 16th birthday, a used Honda Civic that my parents took out a loan for because he needed a way to get to his job at the grocery store. He quit the grocery store after 2 weeks because the work was too hard. The car sat in the driveway for 3 months before my parents sold it at a loss. They had to keep paying off the loan for a car nobody drove. That was another thing I never understood. My parents had no money. They lived paycheck to paycheck. But when Lucas wanted something, they found a way. They stretched. They borrowed. They figured it out. When I wanted something, I was told to earn it myself. So I did. I went to Crestwood Community College for 2 years. I paid for it by working extra shifts at the Wallace warehouse, loading trucks from 6 in the evening until midnight. I went to classes during the day and worked at night. I came home at 12:30 with my arms aching and my eyes burning, and I studied until 2 in the morning because I had a test the next day. I did that for 2 years. My parents did not help me with a single dollar. When I asked my father if he could contribute anything, he laughed. "You want my money," he said. "I raised you for 18 years. That is enough." I did not argue. I did not have the energy to argue. I just kept working. I transferred to Ohio State after community college. I majored in business administration and minored in computer science. I was the first person in my family to go to a 4-year university. My parents did not come to my graduation. While I was at Ohio State, I kept my job at Wallace Manufacturing. I switched to part-time hours and worked weekends. I knew the company inside and out by then. I knew the inventory system was a disaster. They were using spreadsheets and sticky notes to manage millions of dollars in stock. I had watched the warehouse team struggle with it for years. So I built an algorithm that fixed it. I wrote a predictive inventory management system that used historical data to forecast demand and automate reordering. It took me 3 months. I worked on it at night after my shifts. I tested it during lunch breaks. I refined it on weekends. When I finally showed it to the warehouse manager, a veteran named Frank, he thought I had outsourced the work to a professional firm. I told him I built it myself. He did not believe me until I walked him through the code line by line. The system saved the company $500,000 in the first year alone. It reduced inventory waste by 30%. It cut down on emergency orders. It freed up the procurement team to focus on strategic work instead of manual data entry. That algorithm changed my life. Wallace promoted me out of the warehouse and into the IT department at their corporate headquarters in Chicago. I packed a suitcase and left Crestwood behind. I spent 2 years in Chicago, refining the system and building new tools. Then I moved into operations. I got my MBA from Northwestern, paid for by the company. When the vice president of operations retired, the CEO offered me the job. He told me later that the algorithm was what convinced him. He said anyone can manage people, but finding someone who could build a system that saved the company $500,000 a year was rare. He did not want to lose me to a competitor. I became the vice president of operations at 27. I managed a team of 40 people. I reported directly to the CEO. I had a corner office on the 15th floor with a view of Lake Michigan. I was the first person in my family to have a corner office, the first person to have an MBA, the first person to make more money in a year than my father made in 5 years combined. I made good money, and I sent a lot of it home. It did not start at $2,800 a month. It started small. I got my first promotion out of the warehouse and into the IT department. My salary jumped from barely anything to something worth noticing. 2 weeks later, my father called. He said they were behind on the mortgage. He said the interest was piling up. He did not ask. He told me. He made it sound like my duty, not a choice. I sent $300 that month. A year later, I got another raise. My father called again. The mortgage was higher than he thought. The car needed repairs. Your mother needs new glasses, he said. I sent $600 that month. Every time I got a promotion, the amount went up. Every time I made more, they found a reason to need more. It was never enough. It was never going to be enough. By the time I became vice president of operations, I was sending $2,800 a month. Over 5 years, it all added up to over $90,000. And they never once said thank you. I met Erica Dawson at a coffee shop 2 years before the Easter dinner that ended everything. It was a Saturday morning in October. Chicago was cold and gray, the kind of day that made you want to stay inside. But I had been working 60-hour weeks for a month straight, and I was running on 4 hours of sleep and too much caffeine. I needed to get out of my apartment. I walked into a coffee shop near my condo, a small place called Brews and Books that had good coffee and comfortable chairs. The windows were fogged up from a cold. A fire was going in the fireplace. The place smelled like espresso and old paper. I ordered a black coffee and stood at the counter waiting for it. She was standing next to me. She ordered a latte with almond milk and a blueberry muffin. She was wearing a wool coat that was slightly too big for her, like she had borrowed it from someone. She had a book in her hand, holding it open with one thumb while she dug through her purse with the other hand. "That is a good book," I said. She looked up at me. She looked at the book in her hands. She looked back at me. "Have you read it?" she asked. "I have." She closed the book and looked at me with an expression that was equal parts skepticism and curiosity. She was trying to decide if I was genuinely interested or just try to talk to her. I was not sure which I was doing either. "Okay, prove it. What is it about?" "It is about a man who loses everything and discovers that losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to him." She studied me for a moment. "That is surprisingly accurate," she said. "Most people say it is about redemption or second chances. But it is not. It is about letting go." She smiled. It was a small smile, barely there. But I noticed it. I told her it was my favorite book. She told me it was hers too. We talked for an hour. We talked about the ending, which was ambiguous, and we argued about what it really meant. She thought the main character found peace. I thought he found acceptance. Neither of us changed the other's mind. We talked about where we grew up. She was from a small town in Indiana called Brookville, the daughter of a high school teacher and a nurse. She had moved to Chicago for a job in marketing. She loved the city. She loved the energy. She loved the way the skyline looked at sunset. She had been in Chicago for 3 years and still was not used to the winters. I told her about Crestwood. I told her about Ohio State. I did not tell her about my family. Not yet. I forgot about the 60-hour work weeks. I forgot about the money I was sending home. I forgot about everything except the way she laughed when I told her about the time I accidentally set off the fire alarm in my apartment building while trying to cook pasta. I asked for her number. She wrote on a napkin. I still have that napkin. We had been together for 2 years when the Easter dinner happened. She knew about my family. She knew about the money I sent home. She knew about Lucas. She never told me what to do. She never pushed me to cut them off. But I could see it in her eyes when I talked about them. She was waiting for me to figure it out on my own. I was still figuring it out when I drove to Ohio for Easter weekend. The drive from Chicago to Crestwood was about 4 hours. I made it in 3.5 in my Audi A6 because I wanted to get it over with. The highway was empty. The sky was gray. I listened to a podcast about industrial automation and tried not to think about what was waiting for me. I stopped at a gas station about halfway. I filled up the tank and bought a bottle of water. The woman at the register asked if I was going home for Easter. I said yes. She smiled and said that was nice. I did not have the heart to tell her that I was not sure I had a home to go to anymore. I got back on the highway and kept driving. The Ohio landscape scrolled past. Farmland, billboards, exit signs for towns I had never visited. I thought about turning around. I thought about calling Erica and telling her I could not do it. But I kept driving. I parked in front of my parents' house, the same 3-bedroom house on Maple Street where I had grown up. The paint was peeling on the porch. The gutters were sagging. The lawn was overgrown. The house looked tired, like it was as worn out as the people inside it. I sat in the car for a minute before going inside. I saw the curtain in the living room window shift. My father was already watching. The house was filled. That was the first thing I noticed. The living room was packed with people I had not seen in years. Aunt Trudy was there, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine in her hand and a look on her face that said she was ready to stir up trouble. She was my mother's sister, and she had never met a piece of gossip she could not improve on. My mother was in the kitchen, wearing an apron and pretending everything was fine. My father was in his recliner, watching a football game on a television that I had paid for. And Lucas was sitting on the floor, scrolling through his phone, wearing a sweatshirt that cost more than my first car. I said hello to everyone. I hugged my mother. She felt smaller than I remembered. I shook my father's hand. He did not look at me. I nodded at Lucas. He did not look up from his phone. Grandma Rose was in the kitchen, helping my mother with the food. She was 68 years old, my father's mother, and she was the only person in that house who had ever made me feel like I mattered. She called me John when everyone else called me Jack. She said Jack was a nickname for a boy, and I was a man now. She looked up when I walked into the kitchen. "There he is," she said. "My favorite grandson. I am your only grandson, Grandma. Lucas does not count." She laughed. She hugged me. She smelled like flour and perfume. "You look tired." "I am fine." "You're not fine. You are working too hard and sending too much money to people who do not appreciate it." I did not answer. I did not have to. She knew. She had been telling me the same thing for years. She had watched the same dynamic play out for decades. She had called out my parents on their favoritism more times than I could count. It never changed anything, but she never stopped trying. Dinner was at 4 o'clock. My mother had made ham and mashed potatoes and green bean casserole and cornbread. It was the same meal she made every Easter. It was good. It was familiar. It was the only thing about coming home that I still enjoyed. Everyone sat around the dining room table. The table was old oak, scarred and scratched from decades of use. My father said grace, a short prayer that he rushed through so he could get back to eating. My mother passed the food around. Lucas piled his plate so high that the mashed potatoes spilled onto the tablecloth. For a while, it was fine. People talked about work and weather and the neighbors. Aunt Trudy told a story about someone she knew who had gotten divorced, adding details that I was fairly certain were made up. My father complained about the cost of everything. My mother nodded and smiled. Then Lucas looked at me. "Hey, Jack," he said, "I need $1,000. The table went quiet. I put my fork down. "For what?" "For equipment. I am starting an influencer career. I need a camera and lighting and editing software." I looked at him. He was 22 years old. He had never held a job for more than 3 months. He lived in my parents' basement. His last attempt at a career had been selling custom t-shirts online, which lasted about 6 weeks and cost my parents $800 in startup costs. And he wanted me to give him $1,000 for an influencer career. No, the word hung in the air. Lucas blinked. My mother stopped smiling. My father put his fork down. "What do you mean, no?" Lucas said. "I mean, no. I'm not giving you $1,000. Come on, man. You make $200,000 a year. You could spare $1,000. It is not about whether I can spare it. It is about what you're going to do with it. You have never finished anything in your life. You're going to buy a camera, use it for 2 weeks, and then sell it when you get bored. You do not know that. I know you. I have known you your whole life. I know that you quit the grocery store after 2 weeks. I know that you dropped out of community college after 1 semester. I know that you have been arrested twice for shoplifting. I'm not giving you $1,000 to fund a hobby that you're going to abandon in a month." Lucas' face turned red. Aunt Trudy set her wine glass down and leaned forward. Jack, she said, that is not fair. He is trying to start a career. Aunt Trudy, I said, this does not involve you. It involves family, and family helps family. Then why do you not help him? Why are you not giving him the $1,000? She did not have an answer for that. Her face tightened. She picked up her wine glass and took a long drink. My father slammed his hand on the table. The dishes rattled. Enough. Jack, you do not talk to your aunt that way. I looked at my father. He was 48 years old. He had been unemployed for 3 years. He was living in a house that I had been helping to pay for. And he was yelling at me for defending myself. Dad, I'm not going to give Lucas $1,000 for a camera. That is not going to happen. Jack, he said, lowering his voice, you need to think about what you are doing. I raised you. I put a roof over your head. I fed you for 18 years. You owe this family. I have been paying this family for 5 years. By the end, it was $2,800 a month, but it started long before that. It all adds up to over $90,000. How much more do I owe you? My mother spoke up. Jack, please. Not at Easter. No, Mom. I want an answer. How much more do I owe you? Because I have been sending you money for 5 years, and not once have you asked me how I am doing. Not once have you thanked me. Not once have you even acknowledged that I am the reason you still have this house. You think you are better than us, my father said. You pull up in that $60,000 Audi and tell me you cannot help your own brother. You think that makes you better than the family that raised you? I do not think I'm better, Dad. I think I worked harder. I think I sacrificed more. I think I earned everything I have. You had opportunities we never had. No, I did not. I had nothing. I paid for my own college. I worked nights at a warehouse. I taught myself to code on a broken laptop. I built my career from nothing while you sat in that recliner and complained about the world. You do not talk to me that way. I am done being quiet, Dad. I have been quiet my whole life. I have been the good son. I have been the responsible one. I have sent you money every month for 5 years. And you know what you have given me in return? Nothing. Not a thank you. Not a proud of you. Nothing. This is how you repay me? My father said, after everything I did for you, what did you do for me? You gave me a roof and food because the law required it. You did not help me with college. You did not help me with a car. You did not come to my graduation. You have never once told me you were proud of me. So tell me, Dad, what exactly did you do for me? Grandma Rose cleared her throat. She had been quiet through the whole exchange, watching with the calm patience of someone who had seen this coming for years. Tom, she said to my father, let the boy speak. Stay out of this, Mother. No, I will not stay out of this. You have been favoring Lucas since the day he was born. John has been supporting this family for 5 years, and you have never said a word of thanks. You have never acknowledged what he has done. You have never appreciated him. And now you are sitting here demanding that he give Lucas money for some foolish scheme. I said stay out of it. My father never yelled at Grandma Rose. Ever. The entire table went silent. My mother looked like she was about to cry. Lucas was staring at his plate. Aunt Trudy was staring at me. I stood up. Where are you going? My father asked. I am leaving. The money stops today. Do not call me asking for more. Jack, my mother said, her voice breaking. Please do not do this. I looked at her. I love my mother. I did. But she had spent 28 years choosing quiet over courage. She had watched Lucas destroy everything he touched and never said a word. She had watched me work myself to exhaustion and never asked if I needed help. I am sorry, Mom. I cannot do this anymore. I walked toward the front door. I could hear Lucas behind me, his voice sharp and cruel. Go ahead and leave, Jack. That is what you are good at. Running away and pretending you are better than us. I stopped with my hand on the door handle. I did not turn around. I'm not running away, Lucas. I'm just done. There's a difference. I walked out. The front door closed behind me. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the cold Ohio air. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and pink and purple. It was beautiful. I barely noticed. I got in my car and drove. The drive back to Chicago was the longest 4 hours of my life. I did not listen to music. I did not listen to podcasts. I just drove, watching the Ohio farmland turn into Indiana suburbs and then into Illinois sprawl. The highway lights passed overhead in a steady rhythm. I thought about my childhood. I thought about all the times I had been overlooked. I thought about the Xbox that Lucas destroyed. I thought about the car he got for his 16th birthday while I was walking to my shift at Wallace Manufacturing. I thought about the way my mother had never defended me, the way my father had never been proud of me. I thought about Grandma Rose, the only person in that family who had ever seen me. I thought about the money, all those years of sending checks, over $90,000 in total. I had given them enough to buy a house. I had given them enough to pay off their mortgage. I had given them enough to retire on, and it was never enough. I got back to my condo at midnight. Erica was waiting for me on the couch. She was reading a book, the same one she had been reading the day we met. She looked up when I walked in. She did not ask what happened. She just looked at me and opened her arms. I sat down next to her. She put her arm around me. "How bad?" she asked. "Bad. Do you want to talk about it?" "Not tonight." "Okay." She did not push. She never pushed. She just sat there with me until I was ready to fall asleep. 2 weeks passed. The first week was the hardest. Not because I wanted to call them, but because I kept expecting them to call me. I kept expecting my father to leave a message saying he was proud of me for standing my ground. I kept expecting my mother to tell me she understood. Those calls never came. Instead, my mother called me 7 times. I did not answer. She left voicemails. The first few were apologetic. "Jack, I know you're upset. Please call me." Then they became angry. "Jack, you are being selfish. Your father needs that money." Then they became desperate. "Jack, please. We do not know what to do." "Jack, your father is struggling. We need the money." "Jack, Lucas is in trouble again. Please call me." "Jack, I do not understand why you're doing this to us." I listened to every voicemail. I did not respond. Erica asked me if I was okay. I told her I was not sure. She said that was an honest answer. I kept working. I kept going to the office. I kept doing my job. But something had changed. I felt lighter. I felt like I had been carrying a weight on my shoulders for 5 years, and I had finally set it down. I did not realize how heavy it was until I stopped carrying it. 3 weeks after Easter, Grandma Rose called me. I answered. "John," she said, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "It is about Lucas." "What did he do?" She told me. Lucas had come to her house the day before. He had asked her for money. She said no. He waited until she went to take a nap, and then he went through her purse and took $300. She caught him walking out the door. She called the police. I sat in silence for a long moment. "Grandma pressed charges?" "I pressed charges," she said. "I love Lucas. He's my grandson, but someone has to teach him that there are consequences for his actions. Your parents never did, so I'm doing it." I did not know what to say. "He is in jail," she continued. "They set bail at $5,000. Your parents cannot afford it. They called me asking if I would pay it. I told them no." "Good," I said. "I mean it, John. I am done enabling him. And I think you should be done too." "I am done, Grandma. I have been done since Easter." "I know. That is why I called you first. I wanted you to hear it from me." "Thank you. You are welcome." "And John?" "Yes. I am proud of you." I hung up the phone and sat in my office for a long time. I did not feel happy. I did not feel vindicated. I felt sad. I felt sad that it had come to this. I felt sad that Lucas had thrown his life away. I felt sad that my parents had created a monster and then been devoured by it. But I did not feel guilty, because I had done everything I could, and nothing I did had ever been enough. 2 months after Lucas went to jail, my parents lost the house. I found out through Grandma Rose. She called me on a Tuesday evening. "The bank foreclosed," she said. "They have 30 days to move out." "Where are they going?" "They found a cheap apartment on the south side of town. A 2-bedroom above a laundromat." "What about Dad? Is he working?" "He got a job as a night security guard at a warehouse on the south side of town. Minimum wage. He walks 3 miles each way because they cannot afford a car anymore. He works the graveyard shift, 11 at night to 7 in the morning, 6 days a week. He spends his nights walking the perimeter of a concrete building, checking locks and filling out logbooks. The same man who once ran a production floor and managed 40 people now spent his nights alone in the dark, making sure nobody stole from a warehouse full of cheap merchandise. I did not say anything for a long time. "Are you going to help them?" she asked. I thought about it. I thought about my father, the man who had refused to help me pay for college, working a minimum wage job at 50 years old. I thought about my mother, who had never worked a day in her life, living in an apartment above a laundromat. "No," I said, "I'm not. Good, Grandma Rose said. I hung up the phone. I did not feel guilty. I told myself that over and over. I did not feel guilty. My parents had made their choices. They had chosen Lucas over me. They had chosen pride over practicality. They had chosen to believe that the world owed them something. And now the world had collected. I drove past the warehouse where my father worked a few months later. I was in Ohio for a visit with Grandma Rose, and I took the long way back to her house. The warehouse was on the south side of town, a concrete building with a chain-link fence and a parking lot full of potholes. I pulled into the lot across the street and sat there. I saw him at 11 o'clock at night, walking the perimeter in a blue security uniform. He was carrying a flashlight and a ring of keys. He moved slowly. He looked smaller than I remembered. He had been a big man when I was a kid, broad shoulders and thick arms from years of factory work. Now he looked thin. He looked bent. He looked like a man who had been broken by his own pride. I watched him for 10 minutes. He did not see me. He walked the fence line, checked a gate, and disappeared around the corner of the building. I drove back to Grandma Rose's house. I did not tell her what I had done. Erica and I got married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony at a courthouse. Grandma Rose came. She sat in the front row and cried happy tears. My parents did not come. I did not invite them. Erica wore a simple white dress. I wore a suit I had bought the week before. The judge married us in a room with pale walls and a single window. It was not fancy. It was not elaborate. It was us. We had dinner at a small Italian restaurant afterward, just the two of us and Grandma Rose. We talked about the future. We talked about children. We talked about the kind of life we wanted to build together. It was the happiest day of my life. 2 years passed. I did not talk to my parents. I did not talk to Lucas. I heard about them through Grandma Rose, who called me every Sunday to catch up. My father still worked the night shift. He had lost weight. He looked older than his age. My mother had started volunteering at a church, partly out of faith and partly out of loneliness. She had made friends there. For the first time in her life, she had something of her own. Lucas got out of jail after 8 months. He moved to Kentucky and lived with a girlfriend. He got a job at a warehouse. He lost the job. The girlfriend kicked him out. He moved back to Ohio, but my father told him he could not stay with them. For the first time in his life, someone told Lucas no. And then one night, my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it ring. I watched her name appear on the screen. I thought about not answering. It had been 2 years since Easter. 2 years of silence. 2 years of healing. But I picked up. "Hello, Jack," she said. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Softer. It sounded like she had been crying. Mom. "I am sorry." I did not say anything. "I am sorry for everything," she continued. "I am sorry for the way we treated you. I am sorry for the way we favored Lucas. I am sorry for never standing up for you. I am sorry for never telling you that I was proud of you." I closed my eyes. "I know that does not fix anything," she said. "I know that I cannot undo the years of hurt. But I needed you to hear me say it. I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I see what we did." "Mom," I said, "I forgive you." I meant it. But I also knew that forgiveness did not mean going back to the way things were. It did not mean sending money again. It did not mean pretending that nothing had happened. It did not mean that I was going to become their safety net again. Forgiveness meant letting go of the anger so it did not consume me, so I could move forward, so I could be the husband and father that my family needed. I told her that I loved her. I told her that I hoped she was doing okay. Then I told her the truth about Lucas. "Mom," I said, "Lucas is in jail because of you and Dad. You never let him face consequences. You bailed him out every time. You paid his fines. You hired him lawyers. You made sure he never had to deal with the results of his choices. That is why he is where he is." She was quiet. "I am not saying that to hurt you," I said. "I am saying it because it is true. Lucas did not become who he is by accident. You made him, both of you. And until you understand that, nothing is going to change." She started crying. "I'm not going to start sending money again," I said. "I hope you understand." She said she understood. We talked for 10 more minutes. She told me about her volunteer work at the church. She told me she had made friends there, real friends for the first time in her life. She asked if I was happy. I told her I was. She asked if I would visit sometime. I told her I would think about it. That was the last time I talked to my mother. She passed away 3 years later. Heart attack. She was 54 years old. I went to the funeral. It was held at the church where she had volunteered. The pews were half full. Most of the people there were from her church group. My father was there. He looked old. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had spent his entire life being angry at the world and had nothing to show for it. We did not talk. There was nothing left to say. Lucas did not come to the funeral. I stood next to Grandma Rose at the graveside service. She took my hand. "You did the right thing, John," she said. "Which thing?" "All of it." I nodded. I wanted to believe her. Erica and I bought a house in Evanston 3 years after we got married. It is a 4-bedroom colonial with a white porch and a backyard big enough for a swing set. The neighborhood is quiet. The schools are good. The neighbors wave when you drive past. I still work at Wallace Manufacturing. I am a chief operating officer now. I make more money than I ever expected to. I use that money to take care of my family, to pay for my children's education, to save for their future. I do not use it to enable people who refuse to help themselves. Erica runs her own marketing firm now. She works from home. She picks the kids up from school. She makes dinner most nights. We split the chores evenly because we are partners, not servants. We have 2 children. Samuel is 5. Claire is 3. They're the best things I have ever done. I watch them sometimes, playing in the living room or running through the yard, and I think about the childhood I had compared to the childhood I'm giving them. Samuel scraped his knee last week and came crying to me. I picked him up, cleaned the wound, put a bandage on it, and told him he was brave. I did not tell him to toughen up. I did not tell him it was his fault for falling. I held him until he stopped crying. That is the kind of father I decided to be. The kind my father never was. Claire draws pictures for me. She covers pieces of paper in crayon scribbles and tells me they're dragons or spaceships or our family. I put every single one on the refrigerator. I want her to know that her work matters. I want her to know that she is seen. I think about my family sometimes. I think about the house on Maple Street. I think about the Easter dinner that ended everything. I think about my mother, who finally apologized when it was too late. I think about my father, who chose pride over his own son. I think about Lucas, who could have been anything but chose to be nothing. And I think about Grandma Rose. She passed away 2 years ago. She was 75. He spoke at her funeral. The service was held at a small funeral home in Crestwood. About 30 people came, mostly her friends from church and a few neighbors. My father sat in the back row. He did not speak. I stood at the podium and talked about the Sunday phone calls. I talked about the way she called me John when everyone else called me Jack. I talked about how she showed up at my wedding and sat in the front row crying happy tears. I talked about how she pressed charges against Lucas because she was the only one brave enough to teach him consequences. I talked about the way she saw the truth long before anyone else and was never afraid to speak it. After the funeral, I saw him standing by his car. He looked old. He looked tired. He had retired from a security job and was living alone in the apartment above the laundromat. He walked with a cane now. His hand shook slightly. We did not speak. There was nothing left to say. That was the last time I saw my father. He died 2 years later. Heart failure. The funeral was small. I did not speak. I thought I would feel something when he died. Relief. Sadness. Closure. But when Erica told me the news, I felt nothing. I had already mourned the father I wished I had. The man who died in that apartment above the laundromat was a stranger to me. I sent flowers to the service. I do not know why. Maybe because I wanted to prove to myself that I was not the cold, uncaring son he always believed me to be. Maybe because I still hoped, somewhere deep down, that the man I wanted him to be had existed all along. I do not regret cutting them off. I regret that I had to. I regret that it took me 28 years to learn that loving your family does not mean letting them destroy you. But I learned it, and I am passing that lesson on to my children. Samuel asked me once if I had a brother. I told him I did. He asked why we never see him. I told him that some people make choices that lead them away from the people who love them. He thought about that for a moment. Then he said, "That is sad." "It is, buddy. It is sad. I am John Miller. Everyone calls me Jack. Everyone except my grandmother. And I am a man who stopped caring." But that is not quite true. I did not stop caring. I stopped caring. There is a difference. End of record.